Yeah.
Shut this down, Rand, but it is
Okay,
8
I'm sorry.
o'clock.
Oh, I hate to be challenged with anybody's lateness. Good morning.
All right, we'll call the September 19th meeting to order. We'll be looking for an approval of December 19th agenda. However, we do have one change, which is number 6. The city of Sherburne is not able to make it, so we're gonna do some time about housing trust, and Andy's gonna give us an update on current conditions out there in the housing market. Yep.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposed change in the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And I'd be looking for a motion to approve the August 8th county EDA meeting minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, introduction, exciting day to introduce Brian Fleming. Maybe what we should do is go around the room just in case you haven't got faces and names put together yet. So, I'm Ken Giroux.
Todd Maloney.
Laura Kangas.
Teresa Hafner of the City of Big Lake, which we've met.
Dan from admin. Andy Muller.
Josh Mullen, City of Upriver. See you again.
Molly Hanson.
Peter Olson.
Yeah, Brian Fleming.
Mitch Kleins.
You want to tell me just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. It's been a great last few weeks. The presentation will hopefully show that. But came from City of St. Cloud, was working there the last 5 years. That was more on the code enforcement side of the house, so working with pretty much all of our departments, but working with zoning pretty heavily, working a little bit with economic development. But it's been nice to be able to come to the economic development side of the house where we're more solution-oriented and figuring out some creative approaches. So it's been a great journey so far. And before that, I was active duty Navy, and before that, I was a high school English teacher. So I had a few different careers. Yeah.
Great. Anything you want to add on that?
No, he's met with just about everybody in the community. I look at his calendar, there's not a lot of blank spots in there, so we've really done a good job so far.
Well, welcome. We're looking forward to your leadership. Moving on to number 5 then. Big Lake City Economic Development Update. Maybe Ms. Therese.
Thank you for allowing me to present to you all. I'm just going to present from here if that's all right. Oops. All right, I'm going to just start off with the development activities within the City of Big Lake. In terms of housing, commercial and industrial. So starting off with housing development, year-to-date, single-family building permits, we've issued 10, and compared to last year, that was 26. So we're down considerably. We do contract our building inspection services, and I did ask our building official, how do we compare to the other municipalities and townships that they serve? And we're right in line, so this is market. It's not anything unique to Big Lake. That being said, we would welcome more lots within the city. We are running low on those. In terms of we have some what's known as actually on the side here, Prairie Meadows 4th Edition. Currently, that's under construction. There's availability there. That's underway for twin homes. They started in the spring, so they're just finishing up on improvements. And we did give them an early start on 2 twin homes, so but they plan to start some more twin homes very soon. So that's availability. But other than that, it's pretty limited on the platted lots.
Does the city have inventory, like vacant land for inventory or
Not housing.
annexation coming up or?
There's land that's available, but it's got to get the services to it, and the developer has to. So we do have some pretty good sized acreage lots that are already in the city.
Isn't there an annexation plan in place for off of 205th for?
Yeah, the one that Ken is referring to is we actually had a couple of concepts for new neighborhoods that were presented to us, and our planning commission as well as our council did review those. Both great projects. One is actually, they submitted a formal application for preliminary plat. The other one, known as Riverbend Ridge, they just weren't able to make the numbers work at the end of the day. It didn't pencil out. There's wetlands on the property, which, a beautiful property, but that poses more challenges, less lots, if you will. And then the cost of doing the infrastructure. It needed a lift station and streets, water, sewer, it all adds up. So unfortunately, that one isn't moving forward.
So when the city reviewed that and what the developer was running into is problems for making it pencil, did the city do any kind of a look at, okay, what is it exactly? And is there any tools or anything that we need to be pushing for at the state to give us this ability?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's in respects to any state, and certainly we're trying to keep a pulse on any sort of resources the state has. I'm not aware of anything that we could utilize, but even we're troubleshooting all the time. Is there some sort of phased approach with accepting payments for different things? Is there can we cover costs and things of that nature? It does become challenging when we're asked to cover some of those costs up front, or even a portion of them. We would have to bond for it, and that's, of course, not the route that we're taking at this point. But yeah, we're troubleshooting all the time.
The state has a lot of money available if a public entity owns the land. But if private businesses own it, there's not as much funding available. It's kind of the challenge is sometimes you buy the land and then it sits there. The recession came and that land sat in Big Lake for quite a while. So it's always a risk when a public entity buys land.
So the odds are that land is gonna sit undeveloped for eons.
Now, what kind of attitude is that?
That's why we're here.
We're trying to think,
Well, let's just all go home.
what did you just say? We're trying to figure out solutions.
Well, that's not the right attitude to do it with.
Well, I'm saying without assistance of the public sector
Maybe.
or the private.
Well, I
Big topic.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing to look at though is does it make sense? If housing starts are down considerably, I don't know what they are in Elk River, right now, but, if they're down, timing may not be right, for that sort of thing either. Cause you could make them accessible, but if there's no market at the moment, it may not make any sense.
That's a really good point that you bring up, and speaking, the one that Riverbend Ridge, that was actually J.P. Brooks that proposed that. And they know that, they know this, that's their area, right? They know the price point they have to be in Big Lake. So to your point about the market, may not be the timing. So moving on though, for multifamily, we do have what's known as Goldenrod Glen apartment. It's a 74 senior affordable rental unit apartment building. Construction is well underway on that project, and it's actually planned to be open this December. So that's exciting. We definitely.
Is there any talk of phase 2 on this?
It's on hold right now. But yeah, they have kind of gone back and forth in regards to the timing of that. But last I corresponded with them, they wanted to do a phase 2.
And that's another 100 unit? phase?
Exactly. Yep.
Is that tied to housing credits?
This one was the housing credits.
Okay, would phase 2 be tied?
That would
in
be,
housing
that
credits?
was the plan, yes.
Which they don't have any housing credits yet.
Right.
Correct. So it's nice to have a variety of housing in the community though, so we definitely welcome that project too. All right, moving on to commercial and industrial development. Big Lake car condos, the first and second phase have been completed, as well as the third phase in 2024. So that's a great project. It's built up. Yeah, it's amazing and impressive. I first heard about this project before I was even with the city of Big Lake. I was like, oh, didn't think there was a market for it, but there definitely is. DJ Market, they completed the construction of their new store in June and of course opened up. That is on the site that is west of our Lakeside Park, also known as the former A&W site.
On the car condos, is there, I've gotten some questions from constituents around around car condos with a track, for them to be able to run their cars. Is there any land, available near there? Has there been any talk about, being able to acquire additional land to add basically a track for them to run their cars?
There has not been, not from this developer and owner. There has been talk about another car condos project from actually another property owner emulating this project nearby the site. So I do anticipate that they likely will move forward. But right now, it was just that first initial meeting that they would like to do a project nearby this one. That's it, though.
Okay.
Mitch has an update later on what we talked about last month.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's not great news, but we do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just
Just curious, is DG Market, is that a subsidiary of Dollar General?
It is.
Okay.
In fact, when they first submitted their plans for approval, that's what they referred to them, so Dollar General, and they ended up changing that.
Is there a difference, or?
Very similar to a Dollar General. I think it's just more groceries, is that how I would describe it when I've visited that retail store? Or groceries in there. Mega Storage USA, they completed their first phase in 2024. So they've constructed 6 buildings, and at full build out, it'll be 18. So quite a big site with the garages.
Do you know if they're filling up?
I don't know that. I can find that out too. Find that out into them.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell if they're
Yeah.
filled up. Because
So you can tell by driving through and seeing how many units have locks on them. Versus ones that don't. There.
I'm spying on the competition.
I have not been. I'm just telling you how you can tell. If there's no lock on a unit, that means it's open.
We're gonna have to separate
I
Ken
am
and
not.
Frank morning. I don't know what's going on, but they're, you know.
We are night and day.
MTL Company, so they're proposing a semi-truck maintenance facility, warehousing, and semi-truck storage outside on this site. This is located on the easterly edge of town, off of County Road 15. It actually was annexed some time ago. I want to say 2008. Does that ring a bell? I looked at that when they first proposed it, the year that this property was annexed. So it actually was planned, this entire area, for industrial rail park site, but that never came to fruition. So they came in and purchased the property and now are proposing this. It does trigger an EAW, environmental assessment worksheet, because the amount of warehousing they're doing. And that's a long process, but it is required. And we're wrapping up with that. The public comment period ended in mid-August. So we're currently reviewing those comments. They did submit for preliminary final plat application, so that first review has been done. They plan on starting construction. Originally, they thought fall of 2024, but now they're moving it to spring of 2024.
that blank,
Or 2025, excuse me.
that blank spot, that southeast corner, that was in the city, and then they got it out back in the township, and then the guy just developed 2 lots,
Yeah, yes.
residential.
Which makes for a real nice block.
So continuing on with commercial development, Lisi Medical, they are constructing a 45,000 square foot addition, bringing it to a total of 150,000 square feet. They were awarded a 450,000 job creation grant, and then a 550,000 loan from the Minnesota Investment Fund, known as MIF, from the Minnesota Department of Economic Development, and about half of that MIF loan will be it's forgivable. So that was approved by the city as well as the state. And they're planned to be completed in November of this year, and they it's expected to add 30 new jobs within the next few years. So another great project. This is an infill project. This parcel That's located just west of the municipal liquor store in that shopping center space. It was owned by our EDA, and we sold that to Blackbird Laundry, and that will be developed into a two-story, a laundromat on the main level, and then 2 apartment units on the upper level. So we expect that to start this fall yet.
Are they still
Another
doing the
great
laundry
project.
at the old Casey's? Not happening.
That is privately owned, and it is planned, and it was approved for a laundromat. It just hasn't moved forward, so I don't know if it will, but it's approved for that. Oops, I jumped a slide there. Make sure I didn't.
That's it.
Yeah, I'd say. All right, so the industrial park that Dan was referring to, it was done in phases, and this area is north of Cargill, northeast of Premier Marine, just to give you perspective on where it is. And it's jointly owned by the city and the township of Big Lake, so that's a unique setup there. This phase has been slow moving, if you will. The recession happened, and then even after that, it's just been very slow, unfortunately. However, Aero Components did build, you'll see the building on the aerial there with the white roof there. A couple of years ago, they built there, so that's great. And then recently, you'll see the nearly 7-acre site with the star on it, and the 9-acre site. That was actually about a 16-acre site, and that recently was subdivided into 2 parcels to accommodate the development and sale to Raw Organics. So they produce, and I'll share more about their project in the next slide, but they produce protein bars. So we're excited about that, working on finalizing that. And then the 9-acre site that's left over, I'm working with the business to locate on that site right now. So more to come on that. So this is more about the Raw Organics project. This will be their headquarters and production facility. It'll be a phased development. They'll start construction on the first building, about just under 17,000 square feet in the fall here. And then, as I mentioned, it's a future phased project. They currently employ 17 employees, and then they'll add 4 new full-time equivalent jobs within the next couple of years.
Where are they located right now?
They are in Rogers, using space.
Does that site, does it have city services on it?
It is, it's shovel ready. We're selling it for $1. It's jointly owned, so that was the agreement that we had made with them many years ago. So this is known as a City Hall School building redevelopment project. You'll see on the map there, the orange is owned by the city. That's where we have City Hall, as well as the food shelf is in there in the senior center, and then the blue is owned by our EDA. That property was for sale for a few years, so it was having this wasn't selling essentially. So what our EDA does is they will purchase properties that are more challenging to develop, and this is one of them. So this, many years ago, was identified as a redevelopment site. That is moving forward. We did do the environmental studies on the property owned by the EDA, so that's done. The City Hall portion has not been completed, so we did apply for a grant through the MPCA, and I'm expected to hear back from them in October here on that. So right now we have what's known as our Public Facilities Planning Committee, and they've been meeting to discuss where would City Hall go. So that's where we're at right now. We need to determine where we're going. So we're in the information data gathering phase. And speaking of where will City Hall go, this is a site that potentially could house the future City Hall. Our EDA did move forward with a purchase agreement with the property owner, and the reason for that, even though it's not for certain, is because the property's for sale and there's interest in the property. So we wanted to make sure that we did secure that site. Should it not come to fruition in this site, our EDA certainly can sell it. Right now, The wetland delineation is being completed, as well as the surveying work and plat is being prepared. So we will continue to work on finalizing that sale with the property owner.
Where is this?
This would be east of the Big Lake schools.
County
So
Road
if you see
43,
the map there,
Oh, okay.
right by the lumberyard.
Okay.
so east of, it's the intersection of Minnesota Avenue and County Road 43. And the police station is right there as well, to the west. And so one of the things that our department is doing is going paperless. We're using, we're implementing Laserfiche. So our finance department's been using Laserfiche since 2020, but the community development department has not. So, coming on staff a couple of years ago now, I was surprised of all the files and paper files. So that's a goal that we are moving forward with. We started implementing that already. It's going to take some time, but along that same line, we also implemented a new permit software earlier this year, and so we're working towards being more efficient. We'll offer online permitting. Certainly, there'll always be the opportunity for someone to come in and do it in person, paper. That'll always exist, but a lot of people like to do things online, and this increases that efficiency.
What's the reaction to some of the new employees that come in? And it's like, holy moly, what era did I just walk into?
That was me, like, wow, you guys still have paper
I mean, I pull
files?
this big drawer out and that's where all the plat maps are and everything.
Yeah, exactly. With that, that's the end of my presentation. I can answer any questions you may have.
Did I sleep through the Cargill slide?
Cargill.
The
parking
expansion
lot?
that Cargill going on there?
No, I didn't put that on there, but what Ken is referring to is Cargill's doing a parking lot expansion project. So to increase their safety with the semis coming in and the vehicle traffic.
We've had a lot of discussions at the county board level on cannabis. Has that been discussed with the community?
It has. So as far as like the zoning part of it, our planning technician is actually working on a zoning ordinance, and the plan is to emulate what the state has in place. So there's a model ordinance, and that's the plan, is really to emulate what that model ordinance is.
Are there any thoughts on how many retailers the city wants? No.
I don't know that. I don't necessarily foresee that there's gonna be a limit.
I think it'd be helpful, especially around cannabis with the cities, because we're working on the countywide ordinance as well. Just make sure we're in communication, because if there is going to be a conflict between the county ordinances and the city ordinances, I'd like to know it before rather than after. So just my 2 cents on that.
The goal is to pass our ordinance in November, so then we have a month to implement it and be ready to go on January 1st.
The county ordinance?
Yeah. Josh, I don't know if you want to add anything from Milk River.
What I've heard is we're maybe looking at doing 2 private licenses and maybe keeping one as a muni. We have the muni liquor stores and it's not set in stone, but it's certainly a possibility since we have the experience with the liquor
So you're gonna keep
stores.
it at 2 based on the 12,500?
Yeah. At least to start. Would you be able to send the draft ordinance or?
Yeah, we're still changing it
Okay.
weekly. We've had 3 county board meetings and we got another one coming up, so every time there's feedback, we modify it a little bit, but I can send where we're at. And Mitch, as long as we're on it, do you want to add anything from zoning's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, so we're doing the land use side of it, permitted interim. When it comes down to the number of licenses for retailers, I mean, that's what our attorney's office is. We're reaching out to the cities to see what they're doing. I mean, because we want to see if it's 9 for the whole county, do we want to just say, okay, once the cities eat up 9, are we done? Because we have our hamlet commercial areas that potentially could want, like right now, low potency edibles are in Palmer Township, Orac Township, and San Diego Township. So it's like, if they're there for the low potency, are they gonna want a, cannabis license? So that's the attorney's office is working with the cities on that to see even if the cities want the county to, regulate it. Cause the state has allowed municipalities to delegate it to the county if they wanted that. I mean, obviously Elk River's got its own because, bigger city. Sounds like Big Lake's doing their own. So for us, we just need to know how many we need to do for retailer. I mean, just for the retailers for the 9, but no, for the actual land use, we're going out to the townships, we're getting their comments, we're working with the workshop county board to get their input on we have a matrix of all of our zoning and the licenses and how do we want it? Do we want it permitted? Do we want an interim? Do we want a retail endorsement where we have an interim for this one, but retail is not permitted or vice versa? So that's where we're at right now, and got a lot of guidance from AMC on some, things to look out for. But we have so many varieties of. I know the city has a lot more zoning, but we have unique ones where we have limited, but they're very different from the city. Agricultural to general rural to industrial to commercial. So we just got to see what license fits where. We've discussed. They got the micro business, meso business. I mean, we're looking at people that have detached garage are obviously going to want to do something with those detached garage with cannabis. So that's where we're looking at. Do we do a micro business for them because they're allowed one, but within a micro business you can do cultivation, manufacturing, wholesale, retail, and on-site consumption. Well, if someone's doing it out of their garage, we're okay with a few of them, but not retail and on-site consumption. So that's kind of what we're going back and forth with, getting input from the county board and townships.
It's been a huge resource drain, it really has.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Planning, zoning, and some others with our comp plan or other ordinances, but this has just sucked up a lot of the zoning's time.
Well, the other thing is the standoffs, from schools and from, what are we doing with all of that as well? So churches, all those things. So all that's they're working their way through all that now. The other thing is not just on the zoning side, land use side, but I know there's also for example, currently there's a small conflict between the county use ordinance and the city of Elk River's use ordinance. So something else just so that we're all on the same page. So I think it's okay if we have a conflict, but we just need to be aware that it's there.
When you say regulate, Mitch, what does regulation mean?
As far as the city's allowing for us to enforce it, follow our ordinance, that type of.
Are you talking like when you send in someone to make sure they're not selling to under?
Yeah.
And I'm not aware that the city of Big Lake is wanting to be that entity.
That's true.
The city would have their own zoning ordinance.
That's
No,
right.
zoning ordinance,
We would
but the actual
definitely-
regulation, so that's what our attorneys are reaching
Yeah.
out. Yeah, cause all have our own zoning, but as far as the actual regulation of it,
I just want to
We
get
welcome the county to.
clarification.
You're talking about
So,
you guys are talking about the compliance checks, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and that's what we're getting all the department heads together to, so we're all on the same page of what we're doing moving forward, but. We have it where we can't, allow it in our county parks right now, that ordinance, but I had a good question from Steve DeMills at Palmer. He's like, hey, what about our park? I'm like, there's a setback to parks, but I don't know if it's allowed in your township park. So it was a good question that I have to do some research on.
I thought we did a statewide, talk to health about that. I thought we did a statewide, or not a statewide, but countywide.
I think it's
We
only
use
for,
the health ordinance.
I think it's only for county-owned parks, though.
Okay.
yeah, because nobody's ever smoked weed in the park before.
Never.
Now who's there?
Yourself.
So we're a little bit off the topic, but we have time. So from an EDA perspective, as you guys are all working through this ordinance, is what I hear is putting limits on the amount of these establishments that are allowed both in the county and the cities. Now, I understand the cities, so you guys protect your monopoly on liquor sales. But what's the thought process of limiting these overall?
Well, so
Wouldn't the market take care of how many?
Well, so the only thing we can limit is the retail outlets. So of all the other businesses, we have no control to limit those. So cultivators, the meso businesses, the micro businesses, the manufacturers, those are the main ones, right? And then retail. We don't have any authority to limit those four, other than by, land use. You can't put, a manufacturer in the middle of the, neighborhood, whatever. Retail by statute allows us to limit, but it limits what we can limit. So we're required to allow at least 12,000, one retail outlet per 12,500 citizens. So that's what the question is how do we manage that? Because we're not allowed to limit what the cities do, because the cities have their own authority. So if Elk River decides to put in 30, then we're way above the 9 required by the statute. So how do we write that so that it's effective? We also, my concern is that if one city takes up all of the number of outlets required by statute, then what if one of the hamlets, wants to have one, or, someone has an existing business and they want to responsibly add it? I want to be careful on how we limit that as well, right? So we need to write it that way. What I've expressed at the county board level, though, is I want to encourage the more sophisticated businesses. So the cultivators, the meso businesses, and the manufacturers, because those are large agribusinesses anyway. These are not small businesses. These are not cheap to run. These are going to be professionally run organizations. Those I'm happy to encourage, right? We need to zone those appropriately. I worry about the micro businesses, because the micro businesses can also have an on-site use, what's the word?
Endorsement?
Endorsement, thank you. An on-site use endorsement, so you could have, it's a minimal requirement to get into the business. You can have on-site use, and I think it's the most ripe for abuse.
Does the county have an ordinance now that limits the amount of bars that can be opened in the county?
Nope.
So liquor's wide open.
Yep.
And that's what was discussed, was the fees, what's actually feasible, because cultivation, it's like 20,000 initial fee, 10,000 license fee, 30,000 renewal fee. So yeah, those are big corporations. Micro business is like $500 license application fee and like a 2,000 renewal fee. So those are where we're gonna see them, probably in smaller operations.
Yeah.
I get your point, though. I mean, it's similar to, it's a retail outlet.
It's a free market, it's illegal, and now it's become legal, so in my opinion, wherever you stand on the use of cannabis or any of that is immaterial. The state's made it a legal business, okay, so.
But the feds haven't yet, so there's a lot of those other
Yeah, so
issues.
there are other issues because it's still on the federal schedule.
Right.
If you also look at the other states where it's been legalized, there are a lot of downstream effects that end up coming back and costing, specifically through HHS. So that's why we're struggling with it a little bit is because of those downstream effects, and because of the conflict between it's still on the federal schedule versus versus being legalized at the state level. So there's some conflicts there.
Well, you guys are all, on the boards and everything, that's in your court, but from an EDA perspective, our job is to get as many businesses up and running as possible and paying property taxes and best use of that and open it up for small business. So, from this group here, I would encourage you to look at that the free market's gonna do its job as far as limiting how many retailers an area can support, like it does with any other business.
Yeah, for us in the commercial district, retail is a permitted use, so we just permitted use in retail. It just comes down to how many are gonna be allowed.
Well, a little little sidetracked there, but yeah, that's definitely on everybody's mind, so.
Hey, you know, your business.
No.
Got space.
Okay, so on to the housing trust.
Yeah, we'll just have Andy kick it off with a little statistics of what's going on in the market right now, and then we'll transition into Brian's presentation.
So on this, let's go to the Sherburne County one first. Let me zoom that in a little bit. Okay. So this just came out 2 days ago, so this is the Sherburne County Housing Report. So in August of 2024, there were 174 new listings, 105 pending sales, 141 closed sales. The median price for August was $379.9, which is up 10% year over year. The percent of original price received was 99.5. And remember last year we were talking about that. So what that is if a house is listed for $100,000, in August they received $99,500 for it. A year ago they would have received $100,300, so we were in multiple offers. Days on the market until sale right now, it's typically on average 33 days for the county. And in August, there was a 3.2 month supply. We go to the other report. And then if we can go to page 11. And real quick, so stat-wise too, so I just pulled the current statistics from this morning. So right now, there are currently 271 homes listed in Sherburne County. 185 of those homes are 2023 or older built. I always separate that out because a lot of times you'll see properties that are a 2024 to be built on a vacant land, and they can sit there for an extremely long amount of time. So currently, there are 185 homes available for sale that were built in 2023 or older. 86 homes are 2024 built. Currently, there are in the county 44 homes that are active but contingent. There's a contingency on them. 115 pending homes. 95 homes have closed in the last 30 days. So right now, if you take the 271 homes that are available, divide that by the 95 homes that have closed in the last 30 days, we have about a 2.8 month supply. So if you remember last year, we were down to that 1 month supply, so it's completely a seller's market. If we get into that 5-6 months, then we're more of a neutral. Over 6 months is the buyer's market. Brought this up because this is something of interest. So this is the Housing Affordability Index. So if you remember, we talked about this before. So what the Housing Affordability Index is if the state median income, so this is a statewide report, so the state's median income, does that qualify to purchase a house at the state's median price point? And right now, the state median income would not qualify to purchase a house at the price point. And you can kind of see there, back during 12-13, they were up to 300%, 300 times. So here's a interesting thing. So I sent an email to my mortgage lender this morning, and I asked him what are our current rates, because as of September 12th, the national average the 30-year fixed rate was 6.2%. So our current local rates right now here are where did you put this? $6.375, so they went up a little bit since the 12th. And I did see too that the bond, so everyone knows that the Fed dropped the rates 50 basis points yesterday. That's not gonna really affect the 30-year fixed mortgages. They're running off of the 10-year treasury. And right now, as of right now, the treasury is actually up 4 basis points, almost 5 basis points. So I don't think you're gonna see much fluctuation in the rates. Here's the one thing that I found very interesting, and I did not know this. But Tim said this morning, He said there's a big variance on conventional loans right now. The standard rate is 6.375. But if under 80% of the median household income limit for the county, he can get 5.625. So what that is our county average that I looked up this just a second ago here was 99,431. So if you take 80% of that, if the qualifying income for a mortgage is 79,544 or lower, they would actually qualify for that 5.625 rate. And he said he's never seen that discrepancy before. So if you think about the idea that says if a 6.375 rate on the median price home of 379.9, which is the Sherburne County rate, median price sale, your mortgage payment would, just the principal and interest would be $1,891.10. Now, if they're at 80% or lower and the 5.625, that payment would be $1,750, so it's almost $140 savings. And then he did follow up with that just a second ago here. And one thing that's interesting is he said the income calculation goes by whomever is on the loan. So if one borrower qualifies alone, you can run that route and leave the spouse off if the combined income is over. So what that means is if you have someone that were to buy a $359,000 house and the qualifying income for that transaction would be $79,365. So if someone's making, say, $79,000, they would probably qualify to buy a $359,000 house, and that rate then would be 5.625.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
So, if I heard you correctly, if the income is less than that 80% mark, so they have less income coming in, they qualify for a lower rate than someone that's making more money?
Right now? Yep.
That is very odd. So you're encouraging defaults.
And that doesn't factor in PMI insurance, right?
That does not factor in PMI insurance. And my guess is too that this is also factoring in a 20% down payment, so there wouldn't be a PMI.
That's it, mortgage and interest. And I'm still curious, and I'm also curious on this graph.
Okay.
Is the higher the line, the better?
Yes.
Is that what that means? Okay.
So you'll see it peaked out right around that 300%, which means that the median median family income qualified was 300% of what they would need to qualify for a home.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Got it. Okay.
So at a 100 means that every dollar you make is needed to qualify for that house at a median sale price.
Got it. Okay.
Andy, can you share those slides with the board?
Yeah, I sent them to Dan so he can send them out.
Can you go back to the top slide? It's just year-to-year data. Is there any way you could get a 5-year history on that?
You could get a 5-year history if we put it on Excel. So this is the entire state. So the entire state in August of 24 showed 8915 new listings, which is down, 4.8% year over year. Pending sales are down 10%, so 6,200. And then you can see on the right-hand side the year-to-date. So year-to-date in the state, there's been 66,382 listings, which was up from last year. And we know last year there's just no inventory. So the inventory is starting to trickle up. Maybe if you go down, not this, but keep going. So here's a kind of a year-over-year, Dan. Okay. So here's the pending sales. So you can see month by month going back to 2005, the number of transactions that go pending. I want to go down to Closed sales go down, looking for some. So here's, you can see the days on market. You'll see there's over 100 days on market, you know, right after the recession, and going down. There's the median sale price of homes, how that's ticked up. Going down. Average price of homes. Here we go, hold on here for a second. So the prior year, you can see on the right-hand side, so May of 2024 was 100.3, June was 100.6, and then July was 100.1. So that's, in that time is where you saw the multiple offers coming in, where they were bidding over the asking price. And then you can see back in 21 and 22 how that spiked in there too. That was where there's 103, 104%. That's when a lot of the multiple offers were coming in on the properties.
I got a question on the multiple offers where people will jack up the price. When they do that, it's like, oh, great, you know, you got a lot higher than what you listed it for, but what if the appraisal doesn't come in at that number? And then, so the buyer has to sell it for. How often is that?
Well, the kicker with a lot of those is they were cash.
Okay.
So they weren't getting appraisals on them.
Yeah, it just means that much more cash, cash or equity that you have.
Yep.
The buyer has to come up with the difference.
And
So to answer your-
on average, Andy, how many times is a purchase rejected because it did not appraise?
So on FHA loans, the house has to appraise for the purchase price, or they have to either reduce it or cancel the purchase agreement.
Okay.
On conventional loans, there is a clause that I've thrown into some of the purchase agreements that I've done. It basically states that if the property does not appraise, then you come back to and renegotiate by either the buyer has the choice of paying the difference in cash. So if you have a $100,000 property that, let's say $110,000 purchase price, but it appraises for 100. So then we have to base our loan to value off of the 100. So you qualify for 80,000, but the purchase price is at 110. So you can either choose to negotiate, pay the extra 10,000. So instead of 20,000 down, you need 30,000 down, or cancel the purchase agreement.
So I guess my takeaway on this is that the current statistics aren't that far off. They're not bad with 3 months of inventory and the purchase price, but the leading indicators are not good. So, and the current statistics are all backward looking anyway, because those mortgages and those purchases have been worked on for months. But the leading indicators are not good. Okay. Do we have any way of knowing if we have any amount of investor-owned properties in the county?
We could run that by homestead status.
That'd be good.
Yeah, the assessor's office could give us that data.
It'd be, I don't know if it's a problem here or not. I doubt it, but just curious.
Yeah, we could get that very easily.
Would be more around our lake properties.
I would think,
Somewhere else, yeah.
but there's been issues in other states with investment companies buying up single home properties and converting them to rentals. And it's driven, and it drives up property, it significantly drives up property values.
Several cities have moratoriums to block investment properties. Yeah.
Think about it, is that a problem?
I have another report here from the MLS. It's a neighborhood report I can run either on city, zip code, or county. And on this report, and I'll send this to Dan, he can share it with everyone. But on this report here, it shows that that 83% of Sherburne properties are owned, 17% are rentals. Compared to Minnesota is 72% owned, 28% rentals. Compared to the United States, 65% are owned, 35% are rentals. So
That's single family or it's all housing?
this says housing stats and charts.
I would imagine it's single family.
So I'll send this to you, Dan.
So 17% you said?
17%.
We could run it by city too, that'd be kinda interesting to see.
It's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so if anybody wants these reports, they're not difficult to run, just let me know and I can send them today on.
All right. Well, thank you, all great information. And, yeah, and I've noticed too, the leading indicators, cause I check them about 3 times a week or so. Significant price drops in the houses that are on the market. And we're not talking just the, little attention getters, we're talking $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 price drops on the homes that have been listed, have gone extremely up. So as I look at that, that gives me, I read that as an indicator of where the overall market's going.
Todd, do you have any comment?
Well, just thinking, this year's presidential election year, so that's gonna factor in a little bit too, as far as softness. I mean, even our business a little bit slower with that. So.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, yeah, right.
Okay, so who's talking housing trust, Brian?
Yep, I sure can. So I kind of put this together, and we have printouts of a lot of the other counties that have their housing trust funds, but in this presentation, just kind of going over what the Minnesota statutes are on housing trust funds in general, and then providing some examples of different counties. So there's, I believe, 7 or 8 counties that haven't currently, quite a few more that are in the works, but it just provided 3 examples of Otter Tail, Crow Wing, and Winona, and then kind of where we stand with ours. So there are 2 main governing statutes over it. This first one is pretty, nice part is the statutes are both pretty brief, but they discuss how you can create one and generally what the fund should be used for. So generally, they qualify it as needing to help out with low-income housing, and there's quite a few different ways that they define that, which is nice because it gives a lot of flexibility. But generally, you have to make sure that it hits the wickets of meeting their definition of what low-income housing is, which we have up there, and having rules for repayment, so making sure that we make sure that everything through the program is secured. And then you have to send a report up to the state if you're going to have that housing trust fund. So making sure that we meet that requirement too. That's the first statute. The second statute they have kind of further defines that. So what you're allowed to use your funds for, they further authorize. So no more than 10% for administrative expenses, which makes sense. But you can use it to either do grants or loans or loan guarantees for development, rehabilitation, or financing of housing. And that can be housing of any kind, so the full gamut. We can use it to get matching funds from the state and federal. Definitely from the state is what we're looking into. There's a few different ways to pitch for matching funding through the state. And when I go into the county's examples, some of them are using it to provide down payment assistance, rental assistance, or even consulting services for home buyers. But, and again, Housing Trust Fund then has to send an annual report to the local unit of government, and then biannual report to the state. Pretty straightforward on those 2 statutes. Going into some examples of who's doing it already. So Otter Tail adopted theirs in 2021, and they based theirs off their comprehensive housing needs analysis, which when we get into Sherburne County is kind of similar to, I think, what we're looking at is once we get that that housing study back, kind of basing off of that. But the way that Otter Tail County uses it is four different ways, either acquisition, capital, or soft costs for creation of housing, or preservation of existing affordable and workforce housing, the rehabilitation of any existing housing stock, and then they kind of have an other category. So the way they look at it is either for the creation of new affordable workforce housing, preserving that, or in general, kind of going from there. And another specification from the state is you have to have it listed clearly on your website somewhere. So all of these counties need to have a very clear page, us included, on what the housing trust fund can be used for and how to apply for it. So Otter Tail's website was actually pretty slick. They did a good job with that. Right now, their housing trust fund is at $500,000. Any disbursements over $50,000, they have to get approved by their board. That's a common theme. You'll see that over a certain expenditure needs to be approved by the local board. And then they say that they're giving priority to the projects that help with that remain affordable for the longest time. So that's an interesting way of looking at it too. And a few different counties follow that same trajectory of prioritizing projects that remain affordable for the longest period. And then they actually provide a supplemental exhibit, which I don't have up here, but they have a 2 to 3 page document that gives further details of their principles, their description, allocation plan. They're one of the more thorough ones on describing how their program is run, which is really helpful. So for Crow Wing County, they adopted it in 2020, so they were actually before Otter Tail. But again, when you look at each county and their ordinances, they're all very similar, which is really nice because it's a lot of mirrored language between each of the counties. Each of these ordinances are only about 3 to 5 pages long. They're not very long ordinances. And specifically, each ordinance kind of follows the same format, which makes sense. But a lot of that ordinance is just doing those definitions. So when you look at each of the county's ordinances, that section 2 of definitions is the majority of the ordinance. They're very similar to Otter Tail. Any disbursements over $50,000 must be approved by their board. And for them, they actually define a minimum term of affordability at 15 years. So in order to qualify for the affordability side of it, you have to argue that you can at least hit that 15-year mark. And again, that's their website. Does a good job describing their program. This is a second page for Crow Wing. Crow Wing did a good job displaying the 4 different categories that they see it. Again, similar. So you have the workforce housing, you have new construction, you have rehabilitation of existing stock, and then home buyer assistance. So they break it down that way. Generally, most counties hit these 4 categories, and it's definitely flexible as to what we do, but this was a nice way for them to break it down. Winona County was very recent. They adopted it in September 10th of 2024. And so, again, very similar verbiage when it comes to the actual ordinance. I'm pretty sure most counties are just looking at what other counties are doing, which is great, because then it makes the ordinances very similar. They require authorization over $20,000 from their county board. They give preference to projects that are not in the tax incremental districts, which is unique to them. I didn't see that pop up in the other counties. And their fund is at about $50,000 right now through levies, but I think that they're looking to expand theirs as well. It's interesting with Winona County because they belong to that Southeastern Minnesota Multi-County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So they've got some interesting interplay with that. So that does include Goodhue. Am I pronouncing that right? Goodhue? Okay. And Wasaba County. So it's interesting because their funds don't intermix, but they're all listed on this overall HRA website. And again, that's their website. So for us, looking at the thing I have on the slide there, and I don't expect you to be able to read it, but Jessica and her files had a really good how-to guide on how to write up the ordinance. And that how-to guide kind of lists what will go into the ordinance. But from my understanding, this is where we stand. We're looking at a balance of 307K. And using that housing study that we'll get from Maxfield in October, kind of guide where we want to put the focus of these funds and which programs, if any, we want to prioritize. And it'd be nice to be able to create that draft after that housing study comes out so that we can have something at the top of 2025. And obviously more information and really assistance with all this is through the Minnesota Housing Partnership. So I've already spoken with a few of their staff, and they're eager to help out in any way, provide other examples. And there's a manual that's about 70 to 90 pages long, but at the end of that manual, there's a few more example ordinances. Again, these ordinances, obviously the ordinances are gonna be on the county websites, but each county is required to give clear indications through their website on what they're doing with their housing trust fund. So that's kind of where we stand and what we're looking forward to in the next few months here.
Our county attorney is drafting the ordinance, and based on the housing study, we'll have a plug and play. What do we want to add to the ordinance and what we can do? Our HRA is also our county board, which is a little unique. So we wouldn't have to go to the board with approval if we want the HRA to have that authority. Just decisions we have to make over the next couple months is what do we want that to look like. So our October meeting will be heavily housing focused.
All right.
Any questions?
I think October will be a good meeting. I'm looking forward to it. I said, I think October will be a good meeting.
Yeah. Well, floor is still yours, Brian.
Sounds good. If we can bring up that other presentation. So I wanted to throw together something that shows what I've been up to the last 4 weeks. It's crazy to me that it's already been 4 weeks, still the first week, but I tried to make this PowerPoint kind of based on the focus areas that were identified in the strategic plan for the EDA. So kind of going down through each focus area and what we've been up to in the last few weeks here. So first, and of course, I won't read off word for word here, but for business retention and expansion, definitely one of the first things I wanted to do is gain the credentials for getting into our Executive Pulse CRM for that and diving into that program. Work closely with Lath, actually the founder of that company, to understand the program. Seems pretty straightforward, so that's going to be really nice to jump into those business retention and expansion visits. I'll talk about it later, but really getting started with those soon, as soon as October, November, with the cities and townships to coordinate those. Let's see. Kind of noted some things to highlight on each one, but really a lot of this has just been to understand who each of the city staff and township staff are. So meeting with everyone individually, just meet with Therese yesterday, met with Jacob yesterday. Josh and I are still coordinating an exact time to meet up, but and a few others. But it's been, you'll see a running theme with all these different categories has just been meeting who are the players in each space. So to Dan's point, it's been going to a lot of different meetings and keeping everything straight so that way we can hit the ground running with it. For workforce development, it was really important to me to meet with the different players in this area. So met with Tim Zaboy of Central Minnesota Jobs and Training Services to see what they're doing and where that crossover is with the school districts, with Amy Lord, the Greater St. Cloud Development Center, with Gail. DEED, met with a lot of different DEED individuals, which I didn't list here, but understanding some of that workforce side. And actually last night going to the XL open house for the way they see moving forward with a lot of the XL projects and how that's going to affect workforce. So we got some more contacts with the company that XL is contracting with to explore the workforce side of the Sherco decommissioning and some of their solar and battery projects. So I'm looking forward to being able to speak more with those contacts about that whole project. And then actually this afternoon, I'll be going with Jacob to Big Lake for their apprenticeship and career fair. So that's nice too.
Been busy.
Yeah, I want to make sure I earn my keep here. So on the housing side, housing has definitely been really busy in the last 4 weeks, really wrapping my head around that. Fortunately, Commissioner Danielowski let me know about the Housing Affordability Institute's summit, and so I was able to get to that in time. That was 2 weeks ago at this point, but a really good overview of where Minnesota stands, but they also had representatives from Arizona and Colorado, to see where everything stands. A big takeaway from that summit was obviously a lot of that research and data that comes out, but the Pew Research Center was there, the Pew Institute, and they provided some statistics through Minneapolis and a few other case studies that two things. They really advocate for light touch density, which is that idea that trying to throw in as many duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, wherever you can, so you get a little bit more of that density, but that helps with general affordability. And the other interesting thing that they said, through their data at least, was that even if your community is building the McMansions or homes that are over $500,000, their argument is any expansion is good expansion because then you have people cycling through the different homes and that gives more housing stock in general. So when we talk about affordability and affordable housing, it's nice to hear that statistic too, that even if your community is only building the higher end, that's still, researchers showing, is helping out the general housing stock. So hopefully that actually plays out in real life too. And obviously on the housing side, understanding where we stand with the Housing Trust Fund and getting that ready to go in October when we get that housing study back from Maxfield. And then just for policy, just generally understanding what all of our county policies are, both on the employee side and with economic development. That one's a pretty straightforward slide. Oh, and just meeting with the county commissioners. I've been able to meet with Commissioner Danielowski and Commissioner Halsey, and I think I have meetings with the other three here in the next week or two. So, and some of these meetings, I'm going to be different, I think, than Jessica, because Jessica's really outgoing, but I'm still persistent, even if I'm not outgoing. So I like to call myself politely persistent. So if I can't get a meeting established, I'll keep bugging that person and be very polite about it. But
fine, I'll take a meeting.
Yeah, we'll get that meeting going. Yeah, I think I actually gave you a call. Yeah. So on the childcare side, this is another huge area that kind of dove into in the last 4 weeks, but really understanding what economic development's role is in our different childcare initiatives in the county. It's a really interesting time to jump in with Becker's project, their RCCIP grant that they're working with First Children's Finance on, and understanding through meeting with Jacob and talking with Jacob at Becker where that project stands and how we can use what Becker is finding out about their childcare throughout the whole county. I did lead, Stacy, our risk analyst, actually started the meeting for our Sherburne Child Care Advisory Group, but then by the end of it, I think I was kind of taking it on. So the Sherburne Child Care Advisory Group is just having the overall Sherburne County conversation about childcare and making sure that all of our different providers and resources know about each other. The little bit that I've been able to dive into so far, it's my understanding that there are a lot of really great groups doing a lot of great things. So that would be Milestones with their Wayfinder program, which helps people to actually start up childcare centers, either in-home or centers, and give them continued training. First Children's Finance is a huge player in this area. So is Initiative Foundation, United Way, Stearns Bank. And so you have all these different players. And so I'm finding that my role is just making sure that everyone in the county understands that there are probably groups already working on whatever initiative and either hitching our post to their wagon, that phrase didn't work, or actually starting up an initiative ourselves. So when we have our next child care advisory group, I'll actually have, that would be Milestones. So Devin from Milestones is going to be presenting. She is leading up a childcare directors group. So having all of the different childcare leadership be able to meet up with each other and share experiences, that's been identified as a need for our county. And she is doing that more based out of the St. Cloud area with Milestones, so bringing that into the county. So again, I could have a whole presentation on childcare because that's been a really fun and interesting one.
Quick question before you move on. Are they also looking to stay connected to what the proposed changes in regulations are from the state? To make sure that they stay connected and get their voices out there?
Yeah, I think that's been an interesting element, and one that I'm trying to get a clearer answer on is which of these groups, including our group, which of these groups can actually speak directly to the legislatures and have a voice there on that policy side? Because it does seem like at this point that's still proposed policy.
Right.
And they're looking for that feedback, so making sure that we get that feedback up to the state. It's like pretty much universally, all the proposals that they have, the 80-page document, is widely criticized and is scaring a lot of the providers because their proposals include if there's any bugs that you find in your facility, you have to take a picture of that bug and identify the bug and then share that information out with the state and with your parents and a lot of other good intention things, but are scaring some of the in-home providers and some of the other providers. And so, to Commissioner Danielowski's point, making sure that that voice gets out to the state. And I'm not entirely sure who our groups are that are actually talking directly with the state. So figuring that out is important.
I don't know who from AMC is leading this, whether that's supposed to be general government or not, or if it's HHS or where it falls. But we should look in to see if any, it did not make the top list of the general government committee. So we should look in to see if any of the other committees are taking that up. It did come up at the AMC conference. But I don't know if anybody, if any of the subcommittees are taking the lead on that.
Bruce, do you know that?
Yeah, there's a childcare group that's been meeting. I don't know exactly which staff person's handling it. I think it does fall under general gov. I don't know if it came up in your conversations.
I don't think it hit the top 4 though.
It might be possibly under HHS. I'll find out, but there is, the AMC's got a pretty robust discussion going on about it. Becky Young and I are on it for administrators.
Okay.
Becky's from Stevens County, where they actually built essentially a child care center, and then they contract with child care providers. They were just in such a dramatic need.
The discussion that I remember was specifically talking about trying to lobby for changes to the proposed legislation or existing legislation that would differentiate out the in-home providers versus the more institutional providers so that it would encourage more childcare.
Yeah, and Rianne was tracking that super close for us, and what happened with that, that was the committee Becky and I were on, is it's kind of backwards, but the legislature mandated new rules, and HHS missed the first deadline, and they were working very hard to get new rules out. There was such pushback that HHS has elected to not meet the statutory or the legislative deadline. They're going to go back and say we need more time, and they shelved the new rules.
Okay.
Because there was also a very different set of rules. So home-based childcare had a different set of rules than commercial-based.
Yep.
But, you know, as Rianne mentioned once, it was like a 95-page rule book, and so there was a huge pushback. And again, from the administrative standpoint, Becky and I pushed back for our administrators, and there were commissioners also involved. So I'll get the list for everybody.
Okay.
And shelving doesn't mean don't stay active and concerned. It can be brought off that shelf in a heartbeat.
On the positive side of the childcare, really looking at what other counties have done, what other cities have done to be innovative and creative to solve the problem. So First Children's Finance actually has really good data on where our deficits are in the county. I think they even zone it down to each city, kind of their projections for how much of a deficit we have. And working with them and working with Milestones and a few other partners, Initiative Foundation is a big one, to look at, so we have in-home providers, we have these centers, but then there's also these special daycare licenses. The special ones are interesting because that's where we get the workforce and companies involved. So that's anything from having childcare on site, like integrated recycling technologies out of St. Cloud. They have childcare on site. And the way that they do that is actually partner with a Childcare LLC, and they're actually on site. So there's two separate companies under one roof, and integrated recycling technologies offsets the cost for the provider. We also have seen the tricky part with that, though, is a lot of our commercial areas aren't zoned for childcare, or the building isn't set up for it. And so you have a lot of issues with building code and fire code. So the one way around that, and what I'm trying to do a lot of research into, is having a company look into residential districts on the housing side to lease out or rent out a house from an owner to then have the childcare in the home, which is a lot easier to license, and that's still really close to the business. It's a lot easier to license. They get a lot more programs through being in a residential area, and it's a lot cheaper for the business to be able to do that. So looking at some different counties that are doing some of those more innovative approaches.
If I recall, Dan, do you know, is there a childcare up in St. Cloud? Remember that old boat dealership? I think they converted part of a building for a daycare.
Where?
On the west side of 10 when you get up into St. Cloud. I think it was an old pontoon or a boat dealership, or I have to look into it, but there was a lot of, that had to go on for building code, or building.
I'm sure.
Official had to get really involved in that.
Yeah, I can't picture it right now.
We're seeing with some of the creative approaches, the county or city coming in to offset some of those changes to the building that have to be made either through a grant program or loan program. The other focus area for that designation is the Economic Development District. Just understanding where we stand with that. I did speak with Initiative Foundation on that. It's on with Initiative Foundation, and they would be eager to be the host for that as the region. So just getting everyone on board, understanding that we are in a political season, and so maybe waiting until the elections happen, everything cools off, and then we can reapproach to make sure that all of our counties are interested and willing to participate in being the 7W region federally recognized. Still one of the only parts of the state that doesn't have that federal recognition, so just getting that through.
Does it make sense to wait on that, or do you think it matters?
I'm looking at the one county, I guess I shouldn't speak for all of them, but the one county that I was aware of that had the kind of let's wait approach, their election doesn't look like it's an issue, I'd like to say maybe. So it wouldn't hurt maybe to revisit, just see what their temperature is. Or did you do that already?
The county I think you're talking about would prefer we wait till after the election, because even if the ones running for election are in favor of it, they don't want to create a controversial topic right now, so they'd prefer to wait until the election's over.
When did you last have that conversation? Was that prior to filings or after filings? You did?
Right around the same time,
Okay.
yeah.
So in AMC, childcare is under economic self-sufficiency. Looks like it falls partly under general government and partly under HHS. So a pretty robust policy of supporting childcare, both economically as well as with relaxed rules and regulations.
I think there's only 2 or 3 more slides left on this one. The transportation, just diving into where we stand on some of those different things. We do have the upcoming CMRP meeting to see the proposal for moving forward with another bridge crossing over the Mississippi and keep that forward. The Zimmerman Communication Group, so Dave Unzi is still leading that, and just kind of seeing where we stand with that. It looks like we'll meet next month, and depending on, because we're getting into the winter months, next month we'll meet, we might break for a few months and then start back up. But again, that's dependent on what the needs are. If we keep meeting monthly, that's definitely okay. And then marketing, there's a whole bunch here, but basically getting out into the communities, meeting folks, spreading the word. I did create a trifold, I wish I'd printed it out, a trifold for our business lab offerings. So at any event I'm going to where we're passing things out, that's one of the things I'm passing out is making sure people understand that that business lab through Rural Ideas Network is completely free to them, and they offer such a range of things. And after meeting with the Rural Ideas Network representative that we have, she was mentioning that we were kind of under in some of our numbers, and I'd like to see that get rapidly brought up and people utilizing that. So one thing I've been doing is going to our different farmers markets. Been to the Elk River one twice, and just went to Big Lake yesterday. But approaching some of those companies there, especially those that are actually living and working out of Sherburne County, saying, hey, if you want to start selling your products online, if you want to grow further than just the farmer's market, if you actually want a storefront, we might as well work with our business lab. It's there for you as a resource. So trying to really spread the word about the business lab and get more people through their offerings.
That's a good idea is on the farmer's market, because most farmer's market have a radius where you have to be, you know, they don't have any outside of the state or outside of usually the county even.
Yeah, yeah, and it really has been great to see folks, because you know, farmers market gets the rap that it's just fruits and vegetables, and obviously is not. And I'd say about 80% of the people I've talked to there want to grow past the farmers market. They're happy with it, but they'd like to grow past it. And it's a great way to get businesses that are early stage. Some of them I've even talked to about the ILT Academy, that they might be good candidates for getting into the next cohort. So on the ILT Academy, they'll have their Founders Showcase tonight, actually, for their current cohort, and they're starting up their fall cohort. They've had 6 individuals, 6 or 7, because I'm actually going to run through it myself too, so I understand what the ILT Academy is like for entrepreneurship. But getting more people through the ILT Academy too, since we're partnering with them, we need to get as many people through that as possible. And obviously staying connected with some of the larger groups, MAPSED, EDAM, getting more involved there. So MAPSED's next quarterly meeting is next week in Hutchinson, so I'll be going to that. I may have self-nominated for one of their positions just because no one else did. So might as well stay involved, and if no one else is going to run, I might as well run. So, and then just projecting into the future. So looking at Q4, really working on the housing side in October. As soon as we get that study back, really going to the races with the Housing Trust Fund ordinance and getting some proposals there. Really starting up the BR&E visits. My projection is 10 through December, which feels a little aggressive, which I'm happy with, because I talked with Therese yesterday, and she's really eager to get them started back up too. So I know working with each of our communities to get those going. And go into a few different events. There's an event at the end of October, Mobilizing Climate-Aligned and Community-Led Capital. It's a DEED event, but DEED is really excited about this event, and anyone that I've talked to about it is excited. It's about accessing more of those grants and funding opportunities on the green energy side. And with our communities very much in the transition to green energy, it's a perfect time for that. So looking forward to that event too. And then going to all of the township meetings. So, so far I've been to Haven, I was afraid of listing this out, Haven, Palmer, and Clear Lake. That's what it was, yeah, last night. Yeah, thank you.
See where you're going.
And so I'm on the agenda for all the other ones coming up here. So it's been really nice to meet with the townships and understand their perspective. I think that takes us to the end.
Sounds like you've been very active, so that's great. Any quick questions? We're running out of time, and I'd like to give Mitch.
That'll be quick. Got nowhere. I got the contacts from Dan. One number, tried it. So get it back. You had mentioned last month about the track. Constituents were inquiring about it. Car condos with the track. So I did try reaching out to that developer that tried one in Mankato area. The number I tried, no, got my speech all ready to go. Phone went disconnected. Told Dan this one didn't work. Tried another one. Got it all ready to go. Because for me, coming from the planner at a county, I didn't want to make it seem like we're trying to bring them here. From my perspective, I just want to get more information because we've had some inquiries. We actually had someone inquiring a few years ago, so I wanted to get a developer's perspective of what were some obstacles, what were some
Well, if you're
complaints.
getting, if the phone's disconnected from the developer, that's probably a sign.
Yeah. I tried another number, nothing, and then I actually reached out to the city that, he was proposing to do it. I didn't hear back, so. No, we want to know more about it, because we actually had someone inquiring about it. For us, the biggest obstacle was just services. I mean, how are we gonna put all those condos on, septics and, you know, the wells and all that? I mean, we had the space for it, but the property that was targeted for it ended up being sold to a farmer from the Clear Lake area, so now it's just gonna be, continue to be an ag, so. We tried.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I sneak in one thing right before?
Absolutely.
So just recently, there's a 130-acre site that's across from the, racetrack, ERX, straight across, that I think would be potentially a good spot if we were thinking of ever doing like an incubator type thing. I don't know, I think city services are quite a ways away from there, probably. There's fiber there, so. I think that would be a good spot, I mean, because you're not probably gonna put a housing development there, because you got landfill, Samstone, you have all this other stuff around it.
So what type of incubator are you envisioning?
Like smaller business, like 2.5 acre
We're
sites,
actually
you know.
doing a feasibility study in Becker, to build one in Becker too,
Okay.
with the Excel land, but that'd certainly be a good
Yeah,
option. as
so
well.
just throwing it out there. I'll make a motion to adjourn now.
Second.
All in favor?
Hey, Dan, yeah.